Hi there, so I'm going to record here a video on the game Super Bowl. In this video I intend to give a brief explanation of the game, mainly through an illustrated example of play as it were. I'll just video one video on this game and leave it at that. It's called Super Bowl, Il Gioco del Football Americano. That might tell you that it is made by International Team, an Italian company, famed for their jigsaws, and then they branched out into board games. So you get standard International Team big box, and nothing on the back. On the front it tells you it's for 2 to 4 people from 12 years and up. Younger than 12 years could play it, to be honest. It's quite a simple game. It's a two-player game. It's a tactical game of American football. If you play 4 players, essentially you just divide each team up between the 2 players. And it says the duration is between 1 and 3 hours. Now I can affirm that's probably fairly accurate, because when you play the game you choose whether to play 1, 2, 3 or 4 whole quarters, and I have played a quarter and a little bit, and that took me about an hour and a half. So I reckon, and that was the first time I had played it, so I reckon that once you're used to it, play will get quite smooth and quick, and you could do 4 quarters in 3 hours. So, what do you get in the box? Well, in the box you get, International Team always had some kind of counter tray. So you get the divider, you get a little plastic counter tray here. There's no snap top lid for it, unfortunately, which you get with some of their games. And then inside the box you get the field, which is, or pitch. I don't know if it's called pitch. I know next to nothing about American football. Before I played this game, now I understand how it works. So the pitch is divided in 3 parts with their classic jigsaw puzzle method. Then you get some tables and charts piece here, some various other charts. Essentially each side gets 93 pieces, and they are divided into 2 sections. One section is for a defence formation, one section is for an attacking formation, and then there's some a few extra pieces for game markers. So what do we have? Let's have a quick look at, well, I think what I'll do is I will start with the example play, and then the pieces will come into it as we get to that. So there's actually 3 booklets you get with it. So you get the basic rules, and it's all in Italian. But the good news is you get advanced rules, and you get an example of play. Now, some International Team games did come with booklets with rules translations for, like French, German and English, as well as Italian. This one not so. So I guess it was quite aimed really just at the Italian market. In the at the end of the advanced rules you get a section, dictionary of technical terms. So it has all American terms like approved ruling, blocking, catch, chain gang, runner, safety, scrimmage, series of down, etc. And it gives you an explanation in Italian what those terms use. Now these terms are not actually, the American terms are not actually used in the game, so that's really just, I guess the game was an attempt at, I think it was designed in the 80s, maybe the late 70s. So I guess American football was going through a bit of a sort of phase of popularity in Italy, and I think it still has some popularity. For example, I live in a small suburb of Rome, and the local sports field last year they had an American football game on it. But yeah, so I think this was designed to help Italians who are kind of getting into American football with their terms, and also to give them a nice game of the game to play. So the rules, basic and advanced. The basic rules, I'm not going to explain them. They're basically like the advanced rules, except in the advanced rules each players can have different characteristics. So in the basic game, every player is the same. So your teams are all vanilla, and every player does exactly the same as the other player. And so all chances of tackles and the movement distances are the same. But apart from that, the basic and the advanced games are the same. So you're introduced to the whole game in the basic, and the advanced just adds some differentiation in the players. And it expands upon injuries. So I'll start explaining the game to you. So the first thing you do is you dice for the sides to decide who's going to attack, who's going to defend. It doesn't matter if you have the yellow pieces or the white, because each piece, as I said before, has enough pieces for both formations. So when you know if you're the attacker or defender, you then select your formation, and then you'll commence to setting it up on the board. Now, you need to field two formations, because if you know American football, you'll know that sometimes you're attacking, and then things can change, and then, or if you score a touchdown, then the other side will come into attack and you go into defence. So in the advanced game, you have 40 points with which to buy players, and you buy players according to their skills. So I'll just give you a quick look at some examples. Okay. What have we got? Okay, I don't know if I've got a great range, but so for example, if you were the whites and you have 40 points for both formations, so you might say, okay, I want to spend 40 on attack, 20 on attack, 20 defence, or you might overspend on one, underspend on the other. It's completely your choice. And you'll see there's, apart from the letters just denote this is a part of the attacking formation. The B denotes these are backs. So I don't know the proper term. I only got the translation of the Italian term. I haven't looked through the whole dictionary of American terms. But as attackers, you also get you have 11 people normally on the field in your team, and you will need reserves. And then you get you get 5 standard attackers, 5 attackers which are back, 3 which are back, 2 end stops, and 1 quarterback. Now, many of them will just be, or at least some of them will just be your standard attacker with no special characteristics. But then say I'm going to buy this fellow, the red number indicates ability in tackles. So the maximum you get is 3, and the minimum is obviously 0, like this fellow. So this fellow is a really strong tackler. He will cost me 3 points. Now this fellow, he's quite a good tackler, not better than average, but he's also fast. So the other number is the amount of extra squares you can move in a turn. So normally the maximum is 5. So adding 2 more is quite a lot more. And 2 is the maximum extra speed. Some fellows only go up to 1 extra speed, and some, like this poor fellow here, again, there's 0 extra speed. So at the moment, this costs 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's almost kind of like half of my attacking team, my gold star players, and the rest will be made up of bog standard players. And similarly on the other side, if you are, I've picked attacking for that as well. No, there's a defence fellow. So similarly, you get the same on defence. So he's a really good tackler in defence. And in the basic game, attacking, whether you're on defence or tackling is the same. In the advanced game, it depends if you're a defender or an attacker. What happens in tackles can be slightly different depending on the roll of a die. So so you spend your 40 points for attack and defence formations, and then you will commence with the game, with the kickoff. Now, just a note on the rules. I translate the rules. My Italian's terrible, so I use Google, and it's translating those rules. It's not just because I've got a great dedication to the game, but it's to help me to try and learn Italian more. as my never-ending quest to get better Italian. So I translated the whole rules on Google and rephrased them into sort of more appropriate English terms. But the upshot of that is it's about 12 sides of rules, all in all, for basic and advanced. And you need the basic rules because the advanced game adds on to it. So all in all, it's about 12 size rules. They are a little bit wordy. They could be, if it was designed for a game player, you'd use a lot less words, and you could probably do it for a non-game player as well and still get the same message across. So don't think that it's a heavy game by any means. So I'm just checking my rules to remember because I haven't played this a whole lot. So you start the game with the first action. Now I was in the middle of a game there, and in fact I've already shot this video once and then I'm having to go to the second take. So really you start with a kickoff. So first the attacker will set up their places. In this case yellow's attacking, so they set up anywhere. Each person, I'll just give you a bit of a zoom as far as my zoom can go of the board. You can see it's divided into squares. So you've got your yard lines. Here's the 50-yard line, and then there's a 40-yard line down to here, 30 to here, 20, 10, and then you get at the ends you get the posts, and obviously this is the touchdown area. So at the 50-yard line the attacker will set their fellows up first, and they set them up one in each box. You can't have stacking. That only occurs when you're tackling an opponent. And then the defender will set up behind their 40-yard line anywhere they want. And I'm just setting them up really randomly at the moment. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I got some guys had to come off the board because of tackles, so I've got to put some more back on here. Okay. So I don't know. I would set them up better if I was taking the time. What you want to do really is you decide, okay, where am I going to put my good tacklers? So I got these guys are heavy tacklers. They don't move very fast. The best guys are 2 on tackle and 2 on movement. So you get a couple of those on each side. So I'm putting my movers down here, so we're signalling where we're going. So possibly signalling where we're going to kick the ball, because I set up the attackers first. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the attackers, they really they have to spread themselves out because the defender kicks off the ball. Okay, so I've got my tacklers up front and my movers back, and a couple of movers tacklers here. Then the defender sets us up. What have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, now this team, I bought it before, they were quite heavy on attack. Their defensive formation is not so great. But the defender gets to go to decide where the ball goes initially. And okay, so these guys are all box standard, and then I got some movers there. So the defender gets the ball, and for the kickoff it's quite simple. You just decide where you want to put it. Say I want to put it there, then you count the number of yard lines it has crossed. Now it's because you always start abutting this line, it's unclear whether you count that one. It doesn't mention it in the rules. I am counting it. I don't know what difference that makes in gameplay. It could make a fairly big difference because it can be quite hard to get towards the opponent, so an extra 10 yards could be a huge bonus. But so if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, well, I don't know. It's just, it has to be my decision. Let's say for the sake of this time we don't count it. So it's 1, 2, 3. So the balls cross 3 lines. I roll the die, and if it's higher than that number, it stays where it is. So 6, it does stay where it is. So in fact, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I could have actually scored a touchdown straight, a goal straight away. Maybe that's not possible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I imagine it's there. So I imagine I must count that one. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that stays where it is. But say I had rolled something else like a 2. So 1, 2. If I put the ball there in this part, it would have been okay, but I haven't. It's here. So now the attacker takes the ball and he moves it the number left on the die, or the number on the die. So the attacker can move it 2 squares towards himself. And then we go to the first, that is the kickoff, and then we go to the first turn. I mean, if you're reading the rules exactly as read, this is a line that is crossed, so you would just count it. So now we go to what's called the first action. In general, it consists of the attacker collecting the ball and trying to take it as far as possible before the defender pulls that player down, thus stopping the game and establishing a point from which the next action takes place. And I think this is a chance for me to just chip in and say that this is what I think the game does very well. It illustrates. I only knew American football from a few clips I'd seen on TV, you know, just in general culture. I'd never watched a game, I didn't know the rules or anything like that. But having played this game now, I understand how it works, so I know the rules more or less. And I feel that this game does give you the set. It does give you a game that illustrates American football very well, in the sense of you get some fast and furious action, and then everything stops and it's reset, and you have to adjust all your playing pieces, and then you get another bit of fast and furious action, and then it stops again. So it's these kind of stops and starts, and then eventually maybe a touchdown is scored, or else it flips to the other side and it's there you go. So I think the game does that very well. The only downside in the game is that it's a little bit fiddly, because you've got a lot of players to play, and the action's sort of cut up into quite small slices. You'll see how that goes in a minute. Now, in what's called the first action, which is this point until the ball goes down at some point, passing is not allowed. In subsequent actions it will be. So you just get that initial kickoff, a pick-up, and then a run with it. So what now happens? Oh, and I forgot to tell you that at the start, I don't know what the situation of American football is like now, but when the game was made, you had a choice out of 5 of the top college American football college teams. So what we have is the Mustangs, the Hawkeyes, Longhorns, Razorbacks, and Bulldogs. So each side chooses one of those, and you just put it in your team slot down here. So we got the Razorbacks on this side and the Hawkeyes on this side. So the Hawkeyes here are in defence, Razorbacks at the moment are in attack. Let's try and get more or less the whole pitch in. If I move that up a bit. Okay. So then the next thing you do is each side has 5 time tokens with numbers 1 to 5 on it. Now this happens at the start of every turn, and it's called the timing phase, and it's kind of the neatest part of the game, because what you do is you each choose the sort of the distance you hope to travel, and I'm just going to do it randomly for the sake of this. So say this fellow chooses 5 seconds as it is, and this fellow chooses 4. Now then you adjust the clock. Now on the board it's named watch, but that's a classic Italian mistake when they translate orologio as watch, but we all know that goes on our wrist. This is actually the clock, and so he's chosen 4 seconds time, and he's chosen 5. So what we do is we take the higher and we move the clock on 5 seconds. When that gets to the end, we move the 10s. When those get to the end, we've finished a minute. So we add a minute, and then when we've had, after the 14th minute, we've had the 15th, because we start there, and we finished the first quarter. You can choose to play just a quarter and then check the points after that. Otherwise, you can play all 4 quarters. So we're starting the game with a 5 seconds, 5 seconds turn. What this means is that the player with the smaller number, they're called the priority player, and they will actually move first. If both sides choose the same number, the defender decides who will go first. So they get that advantage. In this case, the attackers are actually going to go first. So they get 4 seconds to play, which means they will move each of their pieces up to 4 boxes. Now, if they had an extra movement, they can move that at this point. So this fellow can move extra. So let's see what we're going to do. I think we're going to try and bring the ball around here. So, well, let's get him first. He goes 1, 2, 3, simply just picks the ball up. 4, 5, and he's a runner. No, 4, and he's a runner, so he can get 2 extra. So he moves there. That's his move over. Then this fellow's going 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's got 1 extra, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's him. 1, 2, 3, 4. He gets 1 extra. 1, 2, 3, 4. He gets 1 extra, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He gets some extra. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He got some extra. Now this one doesn't get any extra, but he's a great tackler. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's just going to move up. So they're going to form a bit of a 1, 2, 3, 4, a blocking zone. I think I moved him, didn't I? 1, 2, 3, 4, and he gets 1 extra, 5. So that's a bit of a mistake. We've left a hole there, but there you go. So that's their movement for this turn. Now these, I say that's their first movement phase. Now these fellas get all their movement, so they're moving the complete 5 seconds plus whatever extras they get. So for example, these fellas are all standard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we move them all up. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, sorry if you're getting a lot of ambient noise. I think spring has finally arrived, and the happy inebriate upstairs is celebrating with his reggae. And a bit of a party by the sounds of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's got 2 extra movement. 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Oh, in fact, 7. In fact, 4, 5. Now this guy's in danger because he's a good tackler. 6, 7, but he's not too bad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's their movement. And now these guys get what's called a recovery. So they get to now play the difference in the timing. So they get 1 extra movement. Now if they move their special movement ability before, they don't get it now. They can play it in either of these phases. So all of these fellows are just going to move 1 more square. Like that. Okay. And then that is the end of a turn. Now, we haven't had any tackles yet, so we'll go to the next turn. Now, this is where the tactics can come in a bit careful, because, for example, this fellow might say, right, I definitely want to tackle him, so I need 2. So if I play 2 seconds, this guy's probably want to run around. He's probably not going to go that low, so I'll play 2. Hopefully I'm going to go first. And then this guy might say, he might be trying to bring him down. Because this is a fast defender who's not bad on tackling. This guy won't be able to catch him up unless he does it. This fellow has no extra movement, so he has to do it now, or else he probably won't catch him up. So he might go, well, anyway, I want to move this guy fast suddenly. I want to get them going that way, and then I'm going to suddenly scoot around or something. Or he might gather he's going to and then go 1, in which case we get a very short turn. We would move the watch 2 seconds on because of the higher, and then the defenders will get 1 move. So 1, and then he could add his extra 1, 2 on it. I'll turn him around to show he's used his extra. And no, sorry, 1, 2. I went right. These fellows have to go first, the attackers. So he only gets. I think I played that wrong way around. Yes, I wanted these fellows, the attackers, to have 2, and this fellow cheats him out of it by going with 1. So he goes 1 and then his 2 extra. And these fellows all go round 1. With that, I've got a long string of normal dudes. I can just stomp them around that way. This guy's got a bit of extra movement. He's going 1. He's going 1. There. Okay. Then we go over to the attackers. Did I move the clock on? Yes, I did. This, he goes. So he could try to scoot around this way now, it's probably wise. So he did a bit of a feint, 1, 2, and then 1, 2, his extra movement. So remember that these going second, they move all their movement in one phase, and then they're done. And 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, he's really fast. 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. 1, 2. 2. Okay, and then these guys will get their recovery, so they get 1 extra move. And they're just going to close in like this. I think they're a bit shy of tackling because the other fellows are a lot stronger. He's got, so he can feint back and he gets his extra movement. No, sorry, he'd already done it. So he gets 1. He didn't get his extra movement, so he takes it now in his second phase. Okay. So that's the end of that movement. Still no tackle, so I'll just randomise these and show you how the tackling works. So we get switcheroo, 1 there and 2 here this time. So we add 2 seconds. So we're now in 9 seconds of play. The attackers are the priority player, and they've got strong tacklers. Now this is where you need to make careful decisions, because you could tackle and you say, right, I'm probably going to take these defenders down, and that should leave a fairly clear run this way. But the danger is that your player will fall, and if he falls he might have an injury and be out for several downs, which is not a great thing. So you have to play it quite carefully. So I think we're actually just going to move them all around a bit more, just guarding. And these ones there, and him there, and him there. Okay, so priority player's gone. Now this fellow's actually going to start doing some tackling so we can see it. He's going to tackle here because these yellows, in fact, let me see nothing there really. That's why that's the best you're going to get on the zoom. Actually, if I can bring I can count this all down without having it fall off. There, that's not too bad, is it? Okay, so what we have here is he's a good runner, but he's not great on tackling. So assuming we know our opponent's players, we can see their stats after all. So I'll move him there. 1, 2 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one likewise is going to tackle him. These are 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. He's moving around. 1, 2 to go in there. He's a strong 2, 1, 2. Okay, so we've got a couple of tackles here. Now the way this works is we go to the tabella contrasto, and so we compare their abilities. If they're both 0, we're on a 0 line, but and in which case, this case, yes, we do have 0. So now we choose if it's the defender who's tackling. So I roll the die, and it's a 4, and that's interesting. So this is the defender gets an entangle, which means the fellow he's tackling will not get his next movement phase. We also had a tackle here. It was on the 0. Same. So there's 2 entangles. So that's quite good. That's unique to defenders. If the attacker was tackling, that you'd never get entangles. He only gets the other types of results, which are either attacker down, defender down, or both down. So we got neither of those in this case. So now let's do the recovery of this team. So they're going to now start to bring some of the defenders down. 1 and 2. 1. So there, this kind of quite effectively screening there. This guy's open. He gets to move 1. He's got his extra movement of 2. So he scoots off there. Now, one thing I didn't go into was that you can only actually pass to end backs and quarterback players. Oh, sorry, I haven't gone into passing yet, have I? Yes, this was the first action, the kickoff. Sorry, I'm new to the rules of American football. Okay, so we got a couple of tackles here. So now we've got that's the wrong piece. I'll have to sort of with her. That was a defender on the attacking side. Okay, so we got an attacker with a tackle ability of 1. So he's on the +1 column. I didn't show the movement I just did. Sorry, I forgot where we were. So we got a couple of tackles here, and eventually the ball's scooted around here. So you probably can't really see anyway, but on the +1 column we get a 3, and that's E for entrambi, which in Italian means both. So these both go down. Now what you do for this is you roll the die for each. On a 4, 5 or 6 they are down in that space, but on a 1, 2 or 3, which I didn't get, but just say I got a 2, then one of the fellows is going to go into his injury box of 2. So he's going to be there. At the end of this down, he will move there. At the end of the next down, he will move there. And then on the next down after that, he will be available back in place. So you can see having an injury is quite hampering. So because he goes in that box, we need to mark where he was on the pitch. We mark him with one of these red crosses. And that's necessary because if any other player goes in that space, you have to roll the die, and if it equals the number of players that have fallen down that square, that player falls down also. So we've got 2 fallen downs there. One's uninjured, one is injured. And then we'll roll for the other one. We have a bonus of 2 on that one. And we get a 1, which is actually both. So there would be no just attacker down. And say if we had rolled a 6, that would be the best result for tackling, in which means the defender goes down. We roll the die. Okay, he's not injured. And then the tackler would get to move 1 extra square, and if necessary, so he pushes right through. He can also tackle again, but he can't do this successfully. So let's say that happened, and he gets a. Now he's met his match there though. That's equal. So that's actually an attacker down. So that was a bridge too far, and he's not injured at least, which is better than nothing. Okay, so that's the situation at the end of that term. So things go on like this, and they're going to keep going on until, just say, for whatever reason, either the player with the ball is tackled and he falls, in which case on a 5 or 6 the defender can actually pick it up, and then they can start running towards their the opponent's towards their touchdown area until they get tackled or they actually score a touchdown. Otherwise, if he's not actually tackled, you can, if you think you're about to be tackled and you don't perhaps want to lose the player, you can just put the ball down. So let's just say that happens here. So the game stops, and we will move into the second action, because I have to move this up again. Excuse me while I play around with this. bit, and just so I can get yep, more or less the whole pitch in. Okay, so it's all gone a bit skew with, but never mind. So, because what I need to show you is now we bring the YC marker, which I gather from the dictionary is the yard chain, and we put that, and let's put it here to note we're on the 50-yard line. So, and in fact we're on this 50-yard line. Yeah, either of these sides were on the 50-yard line. So they essentially, the attackers didn't get very far, but you're going to put that there, and then you take another down marker, and you're going to put that in the first down box for the attackers. So the attackers will get 4 of those downs. If it's just down on the field, then it's just down the field, and we do this, what I'm about to do, the resetting for a successive action. Otherwise it's a touchdown, and then if they don't score a touchdown within 4 downs, play swaps around and we reset, we go back to a kickoff. After a touchdown anyway, you will go back to a kickoff and play swaps around. But until then you can get 4 of these downs. So what that means now is everybody gets up off the field except that injured player. We move him on his injury box forward 1, and we will bring on a substitute. So that was he was a moderate tackler, not bog standard, so that's a bit of a loss. So we now get a 0 bog tackler on board, because I didn't keep any of my good players on the bench, which it could be advisable to do. And then the attacker has to set up with, essentially they put their 5 front line, I don't know if they're just the line attackers, the front line 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm missing 1. I have my line backs, 2 ends. Oh, I've got an extra line back because I guess I mixed up the counters when I was demonstrating. Okay, so I got my 5 lines here. You put the ball in the middle there, and then you can set up your quarterback, your line backs, and your 2 ends however you like. And the ends are often, good runners, and some are good tacklers as well. The backs, it just depends. My quarterback's actually a fairly good runner, but my line backs are the best. Now, and now what we can do is we can do a pass. So just say, I don't know, I'm setting up that, I'm not thinking about it. And then the defender can set his fellows up where he likes. And in the play I was doing, I generally just did a solid wall, either balanced in the middle or to one side, or rather where I it looked like, because the attacker sets up first, where it looked like the attacker was throwing their weight towards. But I'm just going to do a kind of safe spread here. No, he's a good tackler. He's going to go in the middle. We think they're going that way again because their quarterback is here. So, and then in the successive time actions, you don't start with a kickoff, but you start with a pass. But first you check the time. So I just randomly pick, okay, it's probably not a good selection, but I picked 5 for defence and 3 for the attack. And one thing which I forgot to do is in between, after a down, you automatically advance the timer 2 minutes. That's considered 2 minutes of dead time, which is going to happen in the game, I don't know, as you bring on reserves, take off injuries and that kind of thing. So we're still actually, let's just say I think we were on about 11 seconds. So we're on 2 minutes, 11 seconds into the first quarter. We reset like this. We've had the first down, and we've got the timing. So the timing is top is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've adjusted the clock, and now we get a pass opportunity. So with the pass, either it can be from one box to an adjacent box, which is by hand, that always succeeds, or in this case we could throw it wherever we like, and then we check the tabella lancio, so the throw or pass table, and you simply cross-reference the distance to a possible result, and the possible results are, where's my Well, one is you get the results you want. One is that it is intercepted if there's an adjacent enemy or opponent player, and the other is that it's dropped, so the ball goes down, and in fact that would be the whole end of this action. Another down would be marked. You'd have to restart again, so you have to be careful with that. And the table goes up, and it starts with 2, so a throw of 2 is fairly safe. It's only dropped on a 1 and it can't be intercepted. So say we throw it 2 there, roll the die 3. Okay, so the line back has caught it, and we have to complete the first move, and then in the next move, that's when we've chosen the times again, then it can be passed again. And if the quarterback is passing it, he actually halves the distance, so he's the best passer, so you can get quite a long or decent pass with the quarterback. So we passed it here, and now we go to the movement. So these are the priority players, so they get 3 movement, and they're going to 1, 2, they're just going to move back. These fellows 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. So they're moving around here. He's moving 1, 2, 3. He's actually got a bonus of 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm moving all their bonuses now because I wouldn't remember otherwise. Okay, so that's their movement. Then the non-priority player gets their full 5 seconds move, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm just going to move them all down this way because it's obvious this is the direction it's going, or is it? They could suddenly feint around here. You can move through friendly players, but like I said, you can't stack with them. Okay, we're just keeping an outlier there just in case. Okay, and then these fellows will get their bonus of 2 seconds. Are they going to go for any tackles? They could maybe do a tackle, and that's hopefully setting up a run through. It's always a bit risky, but it can be done. And so let's just say they try to be clever, and they're going to do a feint around here. But that you can still keep it unclear, because say, okay, these fellows looking like they're feinting, this fellow moves back, so they don't quite know what's happening. So we go to the next timing. So this fellow's like, I don't know, because he might try and, no, let's put the quarterback here, so it could be a pass to the quarterback. Okay, let's say we've had another turn about, so now the quarterback's got it, and he could throw it a long throw. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he could throw it to this fellow here. Let's say that one here, because he's got a decent run, and the defenders are dithering a bit. They're not sure. They've gone for 2 seconds, and these ones are going all out for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Never forget to advance the clock. So at the beginning of the turn, after adjusting the clock, the quarterback throws it 5. So we have that rounded up, I believe. So that's 3. So on a 5, that is a successful pass. On a 1, it could possibly have been intercepted. But there wasn't any opponent adjacent, so it's fine. So now the defenders will get their move of 2. So in fact, this fellow, that wasn't a very great pass or a very great setup, because he can immediately try and tackle. And in fact, these can too. So then we go around like that. And if we got the tackle, the ball might go down, and we would finish the down. We would add 2 minutes, that one would go forward, and we would reset, not having got very far. But I think what actually happens in American football is one guy would be out here, and the quarterback's got it, and he throws, and hopefully this guy's here and he gets it. And even if he doesn't get it, the ball is down there. Is that correct? I don't actually know the rules that say, can the quarterback just throw it to an empty space? I presume that doesn't count as a down, as it doesn't in the initial action until someone picks it up and is tackled with it or puts it down on the ground. The danger, I suppose, then is, one of the defender team could take it. So again, that's not listed in the rules, or perhaps it presumes you understand it from American football, or perhaps just because it says you can't, you obviously can do it. And that essentially is the game. I could, it would be quite interesting to sort of play out a whole thing, but only for people who are finding it difficult to sleep and or aficionados of fantasy American football. But I hope it's sort of given you an idea of how it simulates the American football game. And I think it's the very interesting thing is it's not I go, you go, in that we would move our whole movement and then you would move your whole movement. With that split movement, in that one side moves their whole and the other gets a partial, and then the extra bit, it provides that interesting bluffing, guessing thing, like what's my opponent going to do? Is he going to try and get there? In which case, I need a quick spurt before he does that. Or do I want a long spurt no matter what? And, we'll see what he does first and then I'll try and run around him, so forth. Which is quite interesting. I can see how that could be very exciting in a two-player game. Face-to-face game rather than solo as I played it. But also because it is an abstraction, you do get kind of strange things, in that you have some movement and a hole is left and somebody can sort of move around a player who's kind of like suspended in space, in suspended animation while you move around him, which obviously wouldn't happen quite like that in real life, but the only alternative is that each side moves one box at a time and then a slight increment because of, Starfleet battles kind of movement, which we're not in great hexes in space where there's 5 boxes between every 10-yard line, so each box is 2.5 yards. So this is a good compromise in you have a one side having a split move. So there it is. That is the game of Super Bowl. What have I missed out? Yes, just that you can do kicks. So instead of a pass, the quarterback or whoever had the ball at that point at the start of a turn, they could actually kick it. And that can only happen first of all in the kickoff. The defenders could do it if the attacker kicked the ball and the defender picked it up or it landed on one of them, and they could immediately kick it forward themselves. Or once you get to your 4th down, if you haven't scored a touchdown, you're allowed to kick instead of passing in the 4th down. That's obviously to try and get it over get a goal rather than a touchdown, which earns you 3 points instead of 6. If you get a touchdown, you also you do the transformation. That's just simply a die roll because it's as it says in the rules. In reality, it's more a theoretical action than it's more or less a given, or any result between 2 and 6 is a conversion. They call it transformation technically, but I should have translated it as conversion. So so that's it. Yeah, there's just a few details like the rules for passing. You can't. If defenders have snatched the ball from the attackers, they can't pass in that action, even if it's a successive action. And attackers, you can only pass once in a turn. That's not American football rules, but I think the American football rules dictate that you can only pass it forwards once in an action. That's in between downs. So an action is a number of turns. The number of turns is variable depending just on what happens in the action. An action continues until you get a down. So otherwise, in successive actions, you can only pass it sideways or back. And I think that is it. I've mentioned everything in the rules, and you can see how it plays out. So you get this. Okay, you have to move each fellow a few squares at a time, and there's a fairly mechanical just sort of movement going on. But it is exciting seeing how they interact. It'd be a lot more exciting in a two-player game. And it's interesting in a different way from a war game in that here your lines are generally a lot closer. You have similar things in war games. You might have a front line and then suddenly you get a flanking. That obviously happens, but you don't get passes and running with the ball so much, except perhaps with Stuart's cavalry runs behind the Union lines, etc. But it's interesting. It's different. The sort of the flow, how these units, they're not trying to destroy each other, so they kind of trying to flow around each other and through each other, knocking holes in. But the idea is not to completely eliminate the opposition. That will help if your opponent's down with a lot of injuries, obviously. But it is interesting to see how the flow and the dynamic of American football happens. And like I said, it does give you a real feel. And that's the only real drawback of the game, is that you have this fast and furious action, and then it stops. You have to set up again, and if you're changing from attacker to defender, you have to take all these units off, bring on your other formation, and it is part of the American football game. You decide which player is going where, so you have the movement, fast and furious, and then it stops, and you have a bit of strategy in your placement, and then the movement happens, and it's a bit fast and furious, and then you stop, and there's another placement a bit further forward or a bit further back. I think that's how American football plays, and I think this game illustrates it very well. On Board Game Geek, the only ratings it has in the comments are quite negative, and they're all by Italians, necessarily, because I guess till now the rules haven't been translated. And if anybody is interested in the translation of the rules, I'm really happy to scan and put these up. I'm not going to type them up because that's going to be a whole load of other work. If you want to do it, my writing's easy to read. I can scan it, you can read it, and if you want to type it up, if you have a great what's that thing where the computer scans and reads it itself and converts it into text? Well, I actually did that with this rule book a few years ago, and it should have the technology that should have progressed somewhat, because it was terrible. There was loads of bits missing, and although I did do a translate of it, it was more or less gobbledygook. I don't know if you can do that with handwritten. But anyway, that's there. That opportunity's there, and like I say, this is the game of Super Bowl by an international team from, I believe, the 80s. Not expensive to buy, but not available outside Italy much, I expect. And if anyone is watching this and is an aficionado and would like to buy this off me, I'm happy to hear an offer on it. I bought it out of interest, and I've had my interest out of it. Who knows? Maybe my son, we could have fun with it sometime. But if there's an aficionado really like to get hold of it, it gives me a good offer, I'm happy to let it go. That's the end of the sales pitch. Over and out for me. This has been Super Bowl by International Team.